Good afternoon, everyone. Josh's severe weather, and hope everybody's having a good start to the week, all things considered. We still continue to have to deal with major issues with Helene. It's going to be weeks to months before a lot of this can be cleaned up. And my thoughts and prayers are with everybody who's been impacted by this storm. We are not finished, unfortunately, with the tropical season here. You can see that the Gulf Coast continues to be on alert for another potential system. Now, at this point, we're just in monitor mode. There is no, forecast tracker intensity at this point until the system forms, and we've got a few more days for that to start to take shape. But my concern here is that we're going to have something in the Gulf for a while that's going to bring a ton of moisture back into Florida and some of the eastern Gulf states again. And so this is what we're going to be spending most of the video chatting about. Now, I know a lot of you have come to my videos over the weekend. I appreciate you all. I've seen all the comments. Several of you are concerned that I'm doing this to draw you in and scare everybody to death in Florida and take advantage of the situation. I will tell you this, that is not the case. I'm a degreed meteorologist. I've been doing this for a while. In fact, I appreciate everybody who has watched the videos as I inform you on what's going on. I'm actually going to be giving a fair amount of the proceeds that I make back to help those that are in need here from Helene. Two of the charities that I work with through my church, the Churches of Christ disaster relief effort, I'll be giving to them. And that website, if you'd like to do that, is disasterreliefeffort.org. And also the Churches of Christ disaster response team, churchesofchristdrt.org. Obviously, my thoughts and prayers are with everybody here, and I know no dollar bill is going to be able to change what's happened, but we do want to help folks that have lost it all get back on their feet. That is a huge reason I do what I do, not just to prepare folks for the weather, but to help out in any way that I personally can. So let's talk about what's coming up here in the tropics. A very busy map today, but two of these systems are on the way out. Isaac is post-tropical. Joyce is weakening now to a remnant low by the time we get to tonight, and neither a real big threat to land. I will chat a little bit about Isaac later in the video and its remnants moving into northwestern Europe as we get into the end of the week. We do have a new tropical storm, Kirk, and this one is strengthening significantly, but not a threat to land at this point. Winds are 50 miles per hour. It is moving west, but expected to make a turn closer to where Joyce is now in a few days as potentially our next hurricane and major hurricane after that. We also have a region that is beginning to develop near the Cabo Verdes, the Cape Verde Islands here off the African coast, and that will likely become our next tropical depression and possibly storm by the end of the week. The next name on the list is Leslie. And now we've got an area that a lot of us have been keeping a close eye on, as we should, as it's closer to land here. It is not yet formed, and actually chances for development have come down from 50% to 40%. Now, I do not believe that means we are getting off scot-free without some kind of effect or some kind of a storm. What that means is that right now, the atmosphere is a little bit too hostile for development, and our timeline has actually been pushed back some based on the fact that it will not become more favorable to develop probably until the very end of this week or over the weekend. So the timeline has been pushed back. Does not mean we are not off the hook at this point. I definitely think we're going to have to be watching this more closely when we get later into the week. That area that we are watching is kind of in a couple of pieces. There is a boundary here across the Gulf of Mexico. There is a circulation on the Pacific side and a weak circulation across the southwestern Gulf. Then we've got a wave moving into the Yucatan. Then we've got another flare up here over the southwest Caribbean. So you can see here, it's a disorganized mess, but we're in areas where things will eventually get a little bit more favorable, and models continue to hint over time that this feature in here is going to try to develop when it gets up into this portion of the Gulf. The timeline has been pushed back, though. It's probably not happening over the next 2 to 3 days. It may try to happen later in the week, but after that, more likely that we have some sort of storm formation. We have an upper level low in here that's causing some of these. We've got a bit of a weakness in here. So with all these upper lows, it actually creates wind shear and a somewhat unfavorable environment for storms to form. However, over time, the environment is expected to gradually become more favorable. This is not the exact same setup as Helene. This does not mean over time we couldn't have another Gulf hurricane. I think it's definitely possible. The waters are still very warm even after Helene. But the setup right now does not favor something moving up and gradually intensifying until it hits the Gulf and then goes haywire and rapidly intensifies. I'm not seeing a lot of solutions showing something like that at this point. Speaking of Helene, the remnant upper low is still in our hair and producing some heavy rain across parts of Virginia and North Carolina. It's pretty damp as well in the Northeast and Ohio. This is going to track east and offshore, but we need to wait a couple more days before things improve. Over the North Atlantic, here's the remains of Isaac, no longer tropical. Here is what's left of Joyce, a weak depression. It's going to head out this direction. Both of these are heading in this direction. This is Kirk, which you can see is growing, and here's the next wave behind it. And once Kirk moves into this area, this wave may follow, but it looks like it could try to come farther south. So we are going to probably have to watch that system as well here over time. Here's a look at the United States and Gulf and Northwest Caribbean, and another look here at what's going on across the country. Here's our upper level low over Appalachia. That is going to slowly move east. We may see low pressure forming here, but inconsequential at that point. We do have a southwesterly flow here along our front. This is keeping things at bay. That wind flow continues to create wind shear, which is going to be unfavorable for any kind of storm development in the Gulf over the next couple of days. We will gradually get something to pop, but it's not going to happen very quickly like we saw with Helene. And then we've got a trough moving into Western Canada and another bigger trough moving into the Northwest. These we're going to be tracking the timing on, as they will certainly be in play as we look at what may happen in the Gulf here in about 6 to 7 days. I don't know if it's Gulf or Gulf. I've heard people give me a little bit of hard time about both, but I grew up in Louisiana, so I'll say what I want. All right, here are power outages. Everything is slow to recover, as you might imagine here, especially in the Big Bend, Madison County, Taylor, and Sewanee County, Lafayette and Dixie counties, all significant power outages as well. And Jefferson County, we are back online, though, in Leon County, where Tallahassee is, so better news there. Across Georgia, still very bad where our storm tracked. It's going to take several more days to get these folks back online, so please be patient with them. I know we are losing our patience for sure, but you can see just west of Augusta is where significant outages continue, as well as around Valdosta and across much of the rest of southern and central parts of Georgia, even all the way over to Savannah, Chatham County, Pooler, Richmond Hill, still without power in a lot of locations due to the winds that we had received. South Carolina, lots of people without power still, especially in the upstate. Schools I know are out across a lot of these counties for the next few days while they figure out how to get back online. And where our major flooding is going on, things are still very bad, albeit they're improving across western North Carolina. In particular, Henderson County and Transylvania County, south of south of Asheville, remain without power. Same with the mountain counties of Mitchell and Yancey. Also McDowell and Burke and Buncombe, just a lot of folks without electricity. And in Virginia, the southwestern part of the state remains in the dark as well, especially Grayson County and portions of Smith and Washington and Russell and Tazewell and Bland and Wythe County and Pulaski is all this area just gotten hit hard with rain. And unfortunately, it's not dried out anywhere quickly. We do have flood warnings as well on our rivers, especially across South Carolina, portions of Georgia as well, and parts of North Carolina. The flooding continues to get worse when you get closer to the coast, and it gets better when you get into the mountains as all that water continues to flow down towards the coast here. So we're going to continue to have some flooding challenges. The good news is that these areas are not going to see major amounts of rain. South Carolina and North Carolina will have lighter amounts of rain over the week, but most of our rain is going to be up in Virginia into Appalachia here. So we're not going to see the kind of rain we saw last week. We are going to see moisture building back across the Gulf and into parts of central Florida and southeast Louisiana by next weekend. It turns very wet here, and I'm going to break more of that down here. Here's a look at what's happening in Virginia and North Carolina. Some heavy rain expected, especially Isle of Wight County around Wakefield, Windsor and those locations, southeastern Virginia, and portions of south central Virginia. All the south side is going to continue to have some heavier storms today and maybe amounts of up to 4 new inches of rain, parts of northeastern North Carolina as well. And along the mountains, we're looking at some locally heavy rain. But most of this will fall today and tomorrow, then should begin to clear out after that. Here's a look farther into the Atlantic. You can see here's our upper level low spiraling through the central Caribbean, keeping things at bay. This area continues to look unfavorable for development over the next few days. The GFS a few days ago took something right up into here. It has tucked its tail and says that's no longer going to happen, which is good. but that doesn't clear us of any threat later in this forecast period. It just means we're going to have some delays. You can see here, this is Joyce. Isaac is now off the map. This is Kirk, our next storm, which is likely going to be a hurricane. Going from Captain Kirk to Major Kirk here is a Cat 3 in a few days. And you see there's another wave right behind it that right now isn't developing, but over time it is expected to. Here's a look at the southwestern Gulf, and you can see we continue to have this flare up down here at the tail end of our front. And that's kind of like what we saw with Francine. Now, this is not the exact setup. This is going to be stuck here for a while. It's not going to get pulled quickly northeast. Nothing is moving quickly at this point, but we do need to watch this as some of the modeling has shown a little bit of development with this flare up here over time. And that moisture is going to spread back up into northeast Mexico and Texas. I don't think it gets to the point where it's a depression or storm, but we certainly still want to watch it right now until we're clear of that potential threat. We have this other push coming across the Yucatan, and this one has a little bit better chance of developing, but the one behind it does not at this point. So models have kind of changed their tune here, especially the GFS, which was the most aggressive. That took this area up into here and this area here and developed this one, but not so much this one. Now it looks like they'll switch, and this is the area that we need to watch as we get towards Thursday and Friday. Here's a look at the rain totals that we're going to see. Regardless of formation, we're going to see extreme amounts of rain across the central, northern, and eastern Gulf of Mexico. And it stays wet through next week over Florida, as you can see. Maybe it gets a little better by the middle of the month, but again, a very wet first half of the month. If we look at the upper level pattern, you're going to see why. We've got a ridge over parts of the Ohio Valley and Northeast. We have troughing across the Gulf, another ridge here, and everything gets stuck in between. Unfortunately, a very stagnant pattern here. What we need is a huge ridge to push things from east to west, and that is not happening across the eastern U.S. Instead, we have a long wave trough over the eastern United States this time next week, and then weaker parts of this trough that get stuck down in here and create weaker steering. And what these mean is that we really need to see things moving along more quickly. And unfortunately, that is not the case. Heights stay kind of low here in the Gulf, meaning we may potentially still have some activity for the second portion of next week. The details are going to change, but the pattern is pretty much set up here where moisture spreads up from the deep tropics into the Gulf, and we see multiple areas to watch here of heavy amounts of rain. This is precipitable water indicating how moist our column of air is, and you can see it's towards the high end of the chart here near Florida, as well as over the Bay of Campeche in the southwest Gulf. And eventually, it does get aimed at Florida. The west coast of Florida sees that push of moisture, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Here's a look at development chances. If we take a look at all of the European ensembles, you can see that this feature down here is going to struggle to develop. The one ahead of it, though, has a little bit better shot. And by the time we get to Thursday, we could have a tropical depression in the southwest Gulf. See the one after it? It may have a very small window to form. We may have a low-end system in here, but this is the one that's got the better shot of forming as we move into the end of this week. That's why we've got that 40% chance. Now, as we move this along through the weekend, we do see a push to the north and east. It gets picked up by a trough, and we may see something moving into Florida by next Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. We may also have something coming in behind it. So it doesn't get us out of the realm of possibility that we don't have just one storm, but two storms. But right now, neither is looking extremely strong. So that is some good news if you want to look for good news. You can see here on the ensembles, here's feature 1, here's feature 2. Feature 2 does not really have a great chance of forming. It's feature 1 back here that looks a little bit healthier. But again, this is going to change until our system forms, and it may not get to that point for a few more days. And generally speaking, Texas is in the clear, northeast Mexico in the clear. We may get brushed across the central Gulf Coast, including Louisiana, but our stronger solutions are right now just tropical storm solutions turning right towards Florida. And I can't say if it's the Panhandle, the Big Bend, or the West Coast yet at this point. It's just too soon to make that kind of call. We have a couple of stray guys that show a stronger storm over the central Gulf, but again, not a lot of majority models showing that. Here's the GFS ensemble, kind of the same thing. It still shows some chance this forms, but I think the area to watch really is going to be over this portion of the Gulf here when we get into the weekend. We may see something weak coming towards Florida. We may see a second system, but overall, the general bend is to the right, right through the middle of next week. If you take a look at the GFS model here, This is our latest run. You can see a lot weaker with this feature coming up here towards the Yucatan Channel, and it may form, it may not. GFS is showing a second feature down in here. The two interact with each other, and eventually something does form. And you can see here the timeline on it has been pushed way back. It may never get to Florida, but the moisture's certainly heading that way, or we may have something weak going into Florida and then something else. I'm not very sold on the GFS. It has shown me a lot of inconsistency. The other models are actually in better agreement. Here's the Canadian model, development over the weekend in the same place Helene formed, but quite a bit weaker, and then turning towards the west coast of Florida. In this case, the southwest coast here on Sunday night, and then moving across towards Bermuda early next week. That is a Canadian. Here's the icon. Not a whole lot different than the Canadian model, but it is farther west, and eventually it makes that curve across the Gulf and takes aim at Florida next Tuesday. So another 8 days here to watch. The European, that was last week, don't get worried about that, shows some slower development, but does have something here in the Central Gulf later this weekend, and eventually it takes it towards Florida, but as a weaker system. Don't get too caught up in this intensity right now. I'm glad that these models are not showing a stronger solution, which is good, but nothing is moving quickly. We're going to see a ton of rain coming east with this, no matter what does form. And the AI forecast here shows a similar solution to the European, although not as strong, with something moving into the central coast of Florida here on the west side. When we get to Monday night, Tuesday morning, then that moves out. So that's what we're looking at. Here's the rain potential. This is a blend of all the models, and you can see some pretty significant totals from southeast Louisiana over to the Panhandle and down to central Florida. Amounts, generally speaking, 3 to 6 inches. Over the water, we're going to see more. That's blending everything together. Where this storm forms, obviously, is going to make a huge difference. You can see some pretty big totals showing up here across the southeastern Gulf. And as we zoom in on Florida here, we will see the latest model run has quite a bit of rain coming, especially for the I-4 corridor on south, but also Panama City, significant totals. But there's been a huge adjustment in the models. The earlier run showed incredible rains for the Panhandle. The run last night showed incredible rains for Interstate 4. The run before it showed it farther south towards Sarasota and Palm Bay and the Treasure Coast. The run before that showed the heavy rain up across the Panhandle. So you can see the windshield wiper here. Somebody's going to get a lot, and it's really too soon to say who exactly sees that. So we're going to have more coming up on this feature and how it's going to play out. And of course, as I know more, I'm going to share that with you. I'm a meteorologist, and I want everybody to know what's going on. And I think speculation's okay, as long as we're not going with the highest possible scenario here and every single time, because that's just not going to play out that way. Here's what's left of Joyce, moving slowly north, and will be a remnant low by tonight. This is Isaac, no longer tropical, still a stronger system, but will weaken to a depression, which is good news for those of you watching here in Europe. You can see that we do have that weaker low coming in. It'll just bring some rainy weather in on Thursday night and Friday to portions of Ireland and the British Isles. Nothing super strong at this point, but it will stay wet through the weekend into early next week. And here's a look at the track from Kirk right now. You can see it getting bigger. Should be a hurricane by tomorrow morning, and could be a major hurricane by Wednesday afternoon, with the intensity forecast getting as high as 125 miles per hour. This could even go to Category 4. You can see just quite a bit of lightning in the outer bands and a nice swirl to it as the storm continues to grow in size. And here is the forecast. No threat to land, but likely a major hurricane for the second part of this week, as you can see here. With even a few models trying to get us all the way up to Category 5. I don't know yet if that's the case, but it's possible we could see our second Category 5 of the season. Probably more likely a 3 or a 4, though. Here's the GFS, which shows you how deep this system gets, fortunately turning away. This is possible Leslie after it, and the GFS has that as a hurricane, but turning away as well. Other models are not quite as quick with that recurve. Here's the European. You see here Kirk. This is future Leslie, it looks like, this weekend. And it does not bend it away. It actually has a very strong system here, but at this point, I think it's gaining enough latitude to clear the islands, but we still need to watch that here towards the end of next week. The AI forecast shows both of these storms as well. And again, you can see the recurve beginning, but it's not a guarantee just yet. We just need to watch it a lot more closely. Lastly, I want to talk to my folks here in Asia. Not super worried about Jebi here. It's going to turn away from the Japan coast. I'm a lot more concerned, though, about violent Typhoon Julian, Krathon, I think it's called, or Krathon. And that is a massive storm right now, reaching its peak over the Luzon Strait between the Philippines and Taiwan, expected to turn to the right and make a direct hit here on Taiwan. You can see a very powerful storm system, probably reaching its peak right now. There is a little wind shear that it's going to move into. And you can see on the radar a very scary looking loop here for Taiwan as the bands are hitting the southern and eastern portion of the island. But unfortunately, the track right now takes it this way and then hits it and moves it directly across the island. Just potentially a catastrophe in the making here, as you can see with the HAFS model showing powerful storm that will stop and then turn right and then cross the entire island here tomorrow into Wednesday and then weaken as it moves into the higher latitudes. So we'll be praying for those folks in Taiwan and surrounding areas. I hope everybody's got a wonderful Monday scheduled. Again, I care a lot about the folks in the storm track. I've had friends and family that we're still trying to get a hold of here that have taken on damage, but I thank you for your time today, and let's just make the best of it that we can. If you visited for the first time today or you've come back once or twice and want to subscribe, I encourage you to do that. And I thank you all for your time today and for trusting in me. And for becoming a part of this community and for being respectful and helpful to each other. I want to give all the honor and glory to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who gives me this platform. This is my assignment. God assigns us all something. This is my assignment. And the great part is that I can help others. Paul tells the church of Galatia, Galatians 6:10, therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. And that's my encouragement for you today, no matter what you believe, is to do good to others, not to divide, not to be an adversary, but to help others, because they certainly need it right now. We all need a little bit more help. And if you can bless other folks, that is great. As always, nobody needs to do anything. I just want to encourage it, and I want to offer to help and pray for you no matter what part of your life you're in right now, whatever storm you're dealing with. Just know that the Lord is good and he can guide you through these challenges because we can't do it ourselves. So I hope you all have a great Monday, and I'll catch up with you again tomorrow afternoon. Take care.